Chapter 21. Garrett. The first thing Garrett noticed when he opened his eyes was light. He had no idea how long he'd been in that dark room, but the light both hurt his eyes and made him want to weep for joy. He was alive and he was free. The second thing he noticed was the burning sensation in his throat and belly. It was painful, but not intolerable. Still, he had no idea what it meant, which frightened him a little. And then he saw Renee's smiling face and his fear melted away. "Hey, stranger, how are you feeling?"
"I've been better, but I feel blessed to see your face and light. What happened?"
She sighed and sat down on the edge of his bed, grabbing his hand. "That is a long story, so I'll start at the beginning. You were attacked by Hillary Boyer and my neighbor Chris."
"Hillary Boyer."
The name sounded familiar, but his head was still foggy. "Tim Boyer's mother, the kid you thought was being poisoned and the mom who gave us the creeps." Oh, yes, he remembered now.
"She and Chris knew each other?"
Renee chuckled wryly. "Yeah, it turns out they're siblings."
"Wow, small world. So why did they attack me?"
Clay and the detectives are still working on that, but what we know so far is that their mother was diagnosed with bipolar disorder a few years ago and killed herself. Their dad left town and the two leaned on each other. Then, about 6 months ago, Hillary's husband was killed in a tragic hunting accident. The psychiatrist believes that's when they had their mental breaks. Hillary wanted you because you helped heal her son, and in her mind that meant you should be the boy's father. And Chris helped because he thought he would have a chance with me if you were out of the way. Garrett shook his head.
"That room wasn't built in the last 6 months.
"No, you're right. It wasn't. The police are looking into it more, but I wouldn't be surprised if more heinous things come to light."
"And the boy, Tim?"
Garrett hoped he was okay, though if his mother had bipolar disorder, it would mean he might as well. "He's okay. He's here in the hospital. You were right about him being poisoned. We found levels of bromethalin in his blood. She was also keeping him in a room just like yours."
"Oh, God, that poor kid. Wait, bromethalin? That's rat poisoning, isn't it?"
"Yeah, that's what made you sick too. Thank goodness it takes a lot to be fatal. I don't know how much longer you would have lasted. Evidently, she was giving you more than she gave Tim." Garrett shook his head.
"I didn't eat all the food. I was rationing it since I didn't know how reliable it would be, and I didn't want to starve to death."
"God was watching out for you then, because if you had, it might have been too late by the time we found you. They gave you some charcoal, but they want to keep you here a bit longer for observation." Garrett groaned. He'd just been cleared to go back to work before the abduction, and now he'd have to stay in bed longer?
"Bed rest again?"
"Just for another few hours. They want to make sure you don't have lingering issues." He knew that made sense, but it didn't make him like the idea anymore.
"And Hillary and Chris?"
"They'll probably spend some time in prison and hopefully get help." Garrett squeezed her hand and smiled up at her.
"I can't thank you enough for finding me."
Renee flashed a mischievous smile. "Well, you did promise me a repeat performance of that amazing kiss."
"Oh, so you did it for the kiss."
"And the hope of many more to come," she said, leaning in to press her lips softly against his.
"Ahem, I hope I'm not interrupting anything."
As Renee pulled back, Garrett looked over to see Clay standing in the doorway grinning at them.
"I had to make sure my little brother was okay. Thanks to you, I am. Maybe you can stay out of danger now, both of you." Both of us? What does he mean by that?
Garrett asked, returning his attention to Renee. Pink flamed her cheeks. I may have gotten myself kidnapped trying to find you.
What?
She shrugged and dropped her eyes to their entwined hands. Chris came to the hospital and told me he knew where you were and could take me to you. I knew getting in the car with him probably wasn't the smartest idea, but I figured I'd text Clay the address when we got there. And in my defense, Chris is a good actor. He seemed frightened and not manic at all, but as soon as we got in the car, he chloroformed me.
Thank goodness he wasn't thinking clearly and didn't toss her phone, or we might never have found either of you,
Clay said. Garrett let out a slow breath.
Wow, I had no idea. I'm glad you're okay too.
Suddenly, he remembered the black SUV he'd thought had been following him after the accident. He'd meant to tell Clay about it before the abduction, but it had slipped his mind. Now it seemed important to know. If it had been one of his abductors, he could relax. But if not...
Hey, did either Hillary or Chris drive a black SUV? Hillary owns a black Ford Expedition. Why?
Clay asked. A feeling of relief washed over Garrett.
When I left the hospital after the accident, I saw one a few times. I thought it was following me.
You thought someone was following you and you didn't tell me? Renee asked.
Or me? Clay added. That's kind of important information. I know, and I'm sorry. I didn't want to worry you, Renee, and I meant to tell you, Clay, but it slipped my mind. At least we can relax knowing there's no lingering threat. Maybe you can. I still have work to do, Clay said, but I'm glad you're feeling better. I'll check on you later.
When Clay was gone, Renee turned to Garrett and sighed. Garrett, I really want to make this work, but I don't want to be left in the dark. If we're going to do this, I want it to be together, and I don't want you keeping things from me because you think it will worry me.
I know. I'm sorry, Garrett said. He grabbed her hand and squeezed it. I want this to work out, and I promise I'll tell you if I feel like I'm being stalked in the future.
She rolled her eyes and chuckled. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. But as long as we're talking about making this work, I think we need to tell HR we're dating. I'm pretty sure word is already out, but we should probably make it official.
I'd like that, he said. How about as soon as I'm released, we go see Diane?
This time she laughed out loud. I think it can wait for our next shift. Rest and recovery first.
Fine, rest and recovery.
He squeezed her hand, glad that his rest and recovery would include her.